Hello everyone, welcome back to another DST D&D skill tree video where we're going to be looking at the Mystic today. This is a class that's similar to the Sorcerer in some ways, but has a bit of its own flair, as well as its own special cantrip and its own special spell list. But before we get into this, I just want to note that sorry this video took a little long to get out, and hopefully it doesn't sound terrible. I'm actually in a different room recording right now because I've got some construction going on in my house, so I'm actually in a different room. But if it doesn't sound bad, that's great. If it does, it should only be for a couple more videos. If you don't know what the DST system is or would like a refresher on how the whole thing works, I've got a video linked in the description that explains everything. Mystic, of course, we're looking at because it won the vote. This one is actually pretty close, but if you want to vote for what the next class I'll be discussing will be, you can check out my Discord server or leave it in the comments what you want to see. I'll be at the end of this video putting a list of 3, and I'm also going to start giving a short, brief description of what they do so that you guys get a little bit of knowledge of what they do without having to go watch that video that explains everything. That being said, let's hop into the Mystic. The Mystic is a D6 hit dice character with Wisdom as their spell stat and Dexterity as their major stat. Now, Dexterity actually does matter quite a bit for this character because there's a few things that actually take that number into account when you're using their abilities. When you start as a Mystic, you get 6 plus your Constitution modifier in hit points, 1 hit dice, proficiency in light armor, shields, clubs, daggers, darts, quarterstaffs. And then you get to choose 1 from a set of tools, strength and wisdom saving throw proficiencies, and you get to choose 2 from Arcana, Medicine, Insight, Nature, Animal Handling, Survival, Religion, or Perception. And they also get a +1 to their caster when they start, which is super nice because, like I said earlier, this is kind of a bit of a half caster. It's kind of like the Artificer, where it is a full caster in the sense that the main focal point of the class is spellcasting, but it never really gets to that full class progression that you'd see on a lot of other builds. That being said, it's definitely not a martial. Now, the other thing you get from starting Mystic, or if you dip them for your first branch or subclass even, is Mystic Spells, which says that you gain access to the Mystic spell list. You'll get a +2 to your caster level, and you'll be a spontaneous caster, learning known spells. You'll start with 4 of these from any list you have access to. Now, notably, what is the Mystic spell list? Unlike all the other classes I've gone over so far that's gained access to a spell list, it's just been a regular D&D spell list. But the Mystic spell list is new. And I'm going to pull it up on screen right now. There's 2 actually new spell lists in my system, the Thaumaturge spell list and the Mystic spell list. They're both on this one, but we're just looking at the Mystic today. Now, notably, Mystics only get up to 7th level spells, and most of these you'll probably know what they do. If you really want to read through and check out all of these, you can, look them up individually or go to the D&D wiki or whatever. But I'm not going to go over every single spell because that would take so long. I am, on the other hand, going to go over some of the spells that are new that I made. Also, Fire Stride is a Chardalon stride. I just didn't want to write a Chardalon, and I got lazy. So, let's go through some of these new spells that the Mystic has access to. The Mystics don't get any cantrips, and that's because they get their own unique cantrip when you level up with them. But one of the first ones you might notice that's new is Iron. Iron is a reaction spell that you cast on yourself using only material components. It lasts for 1 round, and the material component is a chunk of iron. When you're attacked, you can generate a field of floating rocks and metal that float about you, making strikes against you more difficult. Roll a d6 and add the number rolled to your AC until the start of your next turn. So it's kind of like Shield, but it could be worse or it could be better depending on what you roll on the d6. But the important part about Iron that differentiates it from Shield is that you can actually cast Iron at higher levels and it does more. So whenever you cast this spell using a spell slot of 2nd level or higher, the die rolled will go up in size. So a 2nd level spell slot will cause it to become a d8, a 3rd level spell slot will cause it to become a d10, and a 4th or higher will be a d12. Which means that, It's shield, but you can actually use it when you have higher level spell slots to cause yourself to become more likely to not get hit, which is pretty cool. Another one that's new is the Steal spell. This is a first level spell requiring your action. It has a range of 30 feet and semantic components, and it will instantly go off once you cast it. It says that choose a creature within range. You make a sleight of hand check using your spellcasting stat instead of dexterity, and the target makes a perception check. If your sleight of hand check beats their perception check, then a random item on their person appears in your hand. If their perception check beats your sleight of hand check, then the spell fails and the creature notices that you are attempting to rob them. Now, notably, when you cast this at higher levels, you can cast the spell using a spell slot of 3rd level or higher. And if you name an object you know or believe your target have on their possession, then if the spell succeeds and they have their specified item, then that item is the one that's stolen instead of a random one being stolen. If the item you specify is magical, the target has a +3 bonus to their perception check. It's kind of a fun one. I always kind of wanted something like this in D&D, and there wasn't anything, so I made it. If you don't like any of these spells, you don't have to add them, but these are ones that I thought of that I thought were cool. So continuing forward, we've got another new one. This is a 2nd level spell, Jet. It's an action spell with a range of touch, and it requires verbal and semantic components. It says that you touch a creature, which then rockets in a direction of your choosing. If the creature is unwilling, they can make a strength saving throw to avoid being pushed. On a fail, the creature is pushed 10 times, 1d8 feet, in a direction you choose. While moving in this manner, any creature within 10 feet of the path the creature takes can willingly join the push for the remaining distance. If the creature is unwilling, they can make a strength saving throw to avoid being pushed. So this is kind of a fun, push yourself or push a friend in a direction, and then all your teammates could join in the push for forced movement that you all collectively take together. Or you could use it on enemies to push them, off a cliff, and maybe they'll even push a few extras off because they'll fail their saving throw as well. A bit niche, but super fun. Also, notably, if you cast this using a spell slot of 3rd level or higher, the distance pushed is increased by 5 times 1d8 for each level above 3rd. Another new one, Wave, which you might recognize if you've been watching the whole series. There's actually a feat called Wave as well, and they're very similar because they're based off of each other. But the Wave spell is actually much stronger than the feat. This is a 3rd level enchantment spell that requires an action to cast, and it has a range of 30 feet, requiring both verbal, semantic, and material components. It lasts for 1 minute with concentration being required. The material component is a gold trilled feather worth at least 20 gold, which the spell consumes. So casting the spell does cost 20 gold every time you use it. So keep that in mind. It says that you enhance the weapon of a nearby creature, causing it to produce a shockwave when used. Choose a creature within range. For the duration, whenever they land an attack, generate a line 15 feet wide and 20 feet long, originating at the target of the attack and pointing away from the chosen creature. All creatures within this line take damage equal to the rolled damage during the attack and are pushed 5 feet away from the chosen target. Super, super busted and strong. Not only does it create a huge, area of effect damage that hits everything, it's all of the rolled damage, which means that no, you're not going to be adding your barbarian's rage damage bonus to this, but if you pop this on your paladin and they smite, all of the smite damage is dealt to everything in that area as well. It's a busted spell, and that's why it requires both concentration and gold to be cast. If you cast this at higher levels, using a spell slot of 4th level or higher, the length of the wave created will increase by 5 feet for every level above 3rd. And when you cast the spell using a spell slot of 6th level or higher, the damage of the wave produced will increase by 1d4 for every level above 5th. So the damage bump is very minor. It's 1d4 every level above 5th. So if you cast it at 9th level, it'll do an extra 4d5 or 4d4 damage. Not really that huge. But the length of the wave created being boosted by 10 feet every level can really get scary fast, especially if you're fighting a big horde of enemies. Being able to just slam them with massive damage and push them all away constantly can cause your fighter or your paladin or whatever you put this spell on to be just novaing everything. The next one is a 5th level divination spell called Tiki Torch. This requires an action to cast, and it has a range of touch, requiring semantic and material components, but it lasts until dispelled. So this could last forever if you don't have anything in your world that's willing to dispel it. Its material component is a bit of gemstone dust worth 10 gold, which the spell consumes. So this will also require 10 gold to cast. But it says that you etch or mark a location in a symbol unique to you before spreading the dust across it, causing the mark to begin to glow and humming a faint, warming tune. You can now at any time swap from your regular senses to the senses of the nearest creature within 10 feet of your symbol. You can have any number of these torches active at any time, but may only peer through one at a time. So it is kind of like a specialized scry spell that you have to set up ahead of time, but notably you scry through the creature that's nearest to it. So for example, you are able to get yourself into like a king's palace or meeting room somehow and tiki torch the underside of the desk or something. You could then later on look through that to the nearest creature in there and scry in on one of their meetings without being noticed. Notably, though, the spell can just easily be dispelled to remove it, so if they do find out that it's there, it is easy to get rid of. And the last spell that I'll be talking about right now is the 7th level Mystic Warhead Evocation spell. This is an action to cast, and it has a range of 60 feet, which comes really important because you'll learn that 60 feet is actually pretty close to the area of effect that this hits. It requires verbal and semantic components, and it says that a giant enhanced mystic missile appears in the sky before you, dropping with such power and speed that all in its landing vicinity will be devastated. Select a point within range. From the sky, a magic bomb will fall straight down to the point, and when it hits, explode. All creatures within 50 feet of the explosion take 77 force damage. And this is unavoidable. It's just directly dealt to them. And then if you cast this spell using a spell slot of 8th level or higher, the damage and size increases by 22 force damage and 10 feet for each level above 7th. So this is kind of like a big explosion one that instantly does its damage no matter what, but notably the damage increase when you start casting above 7th will actually include you in the area because it's only a 60-foot spell. So you're either going to want to find a way to increase the distance at which you're casting this spell or have a way to avoid force damage. But either way, it's a super flavorful spell for the Mystic specifically, and you'll learn why that is as we go through their first features, because it's time to actually get into the class itself, starting off with Mystic Missile. Now, notably, the Mystic did not have any cantrips, and that is because they have a specialized cantrip in Mystic Missile, which says that as an action, you can cast a special cantrip, Mystic Missile. Roll a d6 and launch the number rolled missiles at a target, or targets, within 100 feet. For each missile launched in this way, deal your proficiency bonus force damage to that target. When you get a boost missile feature, the number rolled for the Mystic Missiles increases in this manner. It starts at 1d6 and it goes up to a d8, then a d10, then a d12, and then 2d6 when you finally get the last one. So basically this is Magic Missile but a cantrip. And it's super fun, super interesting to be able to basically, instead of rolling for damage, you're rolling for how many of the missiles get launched. And so you're still technically having a variation of how much you're shooting, but this notably always hits, which could come in handy depending on your build. Next, I'm going to continue down this right path to get more boosts to my Mystic Missile prowess. We'll start off with a +1 to our caster level, and then we can grab a +2 to our spells known. Remember, this is a spontaneous caster, so spells known, not spells prepared. Then we can grab a feat, and pick up Flurry of Missiles, which says that when you cast Mystic Missile and roll a 1 on your missile count, re-roll it and add 1 for every time you re-rolled. Which technically means that if you keep rolling 1s, you could get a really high number of missiles, but that's very unlikely, especially given that you'd have the best chance of that if you keep yourself at a really small level of missiles, which is not recommended because Mystic Missile is pretty strong if you keep buffing the amount of missiles you can launch. Let's move forward into a +2 to our caster level, and then pick up Swarming Missiles, which says that when a creature is hit by more than one of your Mystic Missile, you deal additional damage equal to the number of missiles that hit that creature. So for example, if you rolled a 3 on your missile count, and so you launch 2 at one creature and 1 at the other, the one that takes 1 damage, or the one that takes 1 missile just takes your proficiency bonus damage, but the one that took 2 missiles will take your proficiency bonus twice, once for each missile, and then +2 for 2 missiles hitting them. Next up, I'll continue down this path to pick up a boost missile feature, which, like I said earlier, is going to boost that dice rolled from a d6 to a d8. For a 10-node commitment, we'll pick up a +3 to our caster level. You'll note that although this never gets very high caster level-wise, I mean, they only ever even get access to 7th level spells, we actually do have decent spell slot progression. We started at a +3 if we started in Mystic because we got the +1 from our starting and the +2 from our Mystic spells. And then we've already gotten 1, 3, 6 boost to our caster, which is pretty good for only level 5. Now before I go over here, let's pick up another boost missile feature down in this right corner. Moving into an ability score improvement and another +2 caster. Then we can pick up Charring Missiles. This says that your Mystic Missiles deal an extra 1 fire damage each. So if you launched 6 Mystic Missiles out, you'll be dealing at least 6 extra fire damage because each one of them will deal an extra 1 fire damage. Next, we'll take a boost missile feature, which again is going to up that dice rolled every time we get these. A proficiency bonus increase, which is really nice for Mystics because that's going to increase all the damage on our Mystic Missiles. And then we can pick up Rapturing Missile, which says that when you cast a spell that makes a spell attack roll against a target, for every point over the creature's AC, also create that many Mystic Missiles targeting the same creature. This is super fun, and I love it. Notably, Mystics do not have a ton of spells that actually make attack rolls, but this can be really strong if you mix it with another class that actually has a ton of these. But for now, let's just bring up an example. If you were to use Bigby's Hand to make an attack roll against a creature, and you hit them with like a 22, but their armor class is only 16, that would cause you to create 6 Mystic Missiles that all rocket towards that creature alongside the damage that you'll be dealing with that Bigby's Hand attack. It does not say spell slot. It can be a cantrip, so if you mix this with something like Eldritch Blast from the Warlock, you can be launching Eldritch Blasts alongside your Mystic Missiles, which can get really big really fast. This is a 10-node commitment, notably, though. Next up, we'll pick up a proficiency bonus over here, and then pick up Utilized Missile. This is a bit more niche, but could come in handy if you really want to go for it. It says that you can reduce the number of missiles launched when you cast Mystic Missile, causing all the other missiles to affect the target in the following ways. So if you reduce the number of missiles launched by 3, all the missiles will knock targets prone. If you reduce it by 5, targets lose their reactions. And if you reduce it by 10, the targets are blinded until the end of their next turn. Which, I mean, that can come in super handy if you just keep launching, maybe only 1 missile, but it blinds the targets, can be super nice. And this always hits and there is no save. And that's kind of the idea behind the Mystic Missile system, is that there aren't really saves before it. We'll pick up another +2 to our caster level, and a feat. Before picking up the capstone over here, which is an 11-node commitment, Radiant Missiles. This just says that the damage of your Mystic Missiles is changed to radiant damage, and when you cast Mystic Missile, roll an extra d4 for your missile count. So not only is the amount of missiles going up drastically, I mean, a d4 extra every single time is great, but the damage is technically going to be more easily resisted using radiant damage instead of force damage. So it's a bit of a trade-off, but it is still pretty good. Next up, we can pick up an ability score improvement over here, the final boost missile feature, and a +2 to our spells known over here as well. We're going to move into blend spell next, which is the other half of the mystic, and this is honestly the funner part in my opinion. Blend spell says that you gain a number of blend points equal to your dexterity modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Expended blend points will return after completing a long rest. When you cast a spell, you can select another spell that you have access to and exchange one of the following aspects of the spell you cast with the spell you selected. The spell's range. The spell's area of effect must replace a spell which already has an area of effect. The spell's non-consumed material, semantic or verbal components. The spell's damage type. The spell's duration must replace a non-instant spell. And the spell's higher level effects. When you do this, you must expend a number of blend points equal to half rounded up of both spells levels combined. So a very easy example of this would be taking something like Fireball in Armor of Agathis to turn your Fireball into a Cold Ball. And that works just fine. Or you could, for example, turn a grease, which you normally would cover a 10-foot square, into a fireball-sized grease, which now covers the size that Fireball hits. There's a lot of fun combos that you can get, and in order to do so, you'll need to be spending these blend points, which you'll be getting as you level up and increase your dexterity modifier, and when your proficiency bonus goes up. Next, we'll pick up a +1 caster over here, a +2 spells known, and we get a +2 to our blend points as well. So this is another way that you can actually get more blend points, is by simply getting these features that give you extra blend points per long rest. Next, we'll pick up an ability score improvement and a super fun feature which is called Double or Nothing. This says that when you cast a spell, you can expend a number of blend points equal to the spell's level and roll a d6. On a 1 to 3, the spell slot is expended and nothing happens. On a 4 to 6, the spell is cast 2 times, deals double damage, or doubles in size, your choice. You cannot use double or nothing and blend spell for the same casting. But this is fun. I mean, can you imagine like throwing in a fireball, expending, 3 blend points, and rolling that d6? You get a 4 through 6, you get 2 fireballs. But if you get a 1 through 3, nothing happens. Such a coin flip, kind of a gambly playstyle. And I mean, if you guys have been watching these videos, you know that I really like gambly playstyles. Next, we'll pick up a feat and another proficiency bonus increase before going to another +2 spells known, +3 caster, and a 10-node commitment over here called Constant Shard. Constant Shard says that you can select a spell you know. You no longer normally can cast this spell, but once per short rest, you can cast it without expending a spell slot. This is a way to basically turn a spell that you feel like you were casting once per day anyway into just a constant spell that you know. So for example, if you multi-class wizard and have been using mage armor to keep your armor class decently high, you could pick that as your spell, and then every day, once per day, you can cast it. Pretty nice. It's actually once per short rest. So if you were using Armor of Agathis, which is actually on the Mystic spell list, this is another one that's super great to just, constant cast. Although you wouldn't be able to cast it at higher levels, which is unfortunate. Next, we'll pick up a +2 to our spells known, a +2 to our caster level, and we'll grab Mixing Mana over here. Mixing Mana says you gain an extra blend points equal to your wisdom modifier. It's a bit boring, honestly. It just gives you way more blend points to work with because you're a mystic. You're using wisdom as your spellcasting modifier, unless you are multi-class mystic. But it's nice to have a whole bunch of extra blend points to be, double or nothing things, blending spells all the time. We'll pick up an ability score improvement and another +2 to our blend points before moving over here to a +2 spells known, a +1 to our caster level, a +1 to our proficiency bonus, and then a +3 to our blend points. And now you'll note that I've kind of left these in the middle for a while, just unlooked at. And why would I be doing that? Well, it's because they're super fun, and I wanted to save them for last. So let's go over grafting spells first. Grafting spells says that when you cast a spell with any range other than self, you can also cast a spell with a range of self. Both these spells together will require an action to cast and will require a spell slot of a level equal to both spells levels combined instead of their regular spell slots required. So, for example, your opening round of combat could be Fairy Fire and Armor of Agathis at the same time, which would be one action to cast both of them, and it would require a second level spell to do so, because Armor of Agathis is a first level spell, and so is Fairy Fire. Notably, you could just like always upcast both of these, but you'd have to increase the number of the spell slot cast to the combination of the two. So if you have a 7th level spell slot, you could cast a 4th level Armor of Agathis and a Fireball at the same time. Next up, we'll pick up Cascade, which says that when you cast an action spell without using Double or Nothing or Blend spell, you can use your bonus action to also cast an action spell, as long as the second spell's level is at least 2 levels lower than your first spell. After using Cascade, you must spend blend points or finish a short or long rest before you can use Cascade again. So this is a bit of a weird one, but it basically allows you to use your bonus action to cast spells every other turn, because you need to spend blend points when you're casting a spell in order to do so. So you cannot use Cascade and Double or Nothing or Blend spell, but then the next turn when you use Double or Nothing or Blend spell or some other way of spending blend points, you'll get Cascade back and you can use it again. And finally, let's pick up Flooding Mage. This is very similar to the heightened state that the sorcerer can get into. It says once per long rest, you can enter a flooding state where every spell you cast until the start of your next turn is upcast to 9th level. When blending spells, using Double or Nothing, or grafting spells during this time, the spell's level will be considered as their normal level for the sake of blend points / spell slots costs. And once the next turn begins after using Flooding Mage, you're stunned until the start of your next turn. So basically, this is a one-time use per day thing that is going to make you absolutely unstoppable for that one turn. I definitely recommend picking up levels in things like Fighter to get Action Surge off so that you can be casting as many spells on this one turn as possible. Monk will actually help out a lot in this too with some of their stasis-esque abilities, but we haven't actually gone over Monk yet, so you'll have to wait for that video to know what I'm talking about. In total, the Mystic gets to a 20th level caster, which means they'll have access to an 8th level spell slot, but the Mystic spell list doesn't actually have any 8th level spells. So keep that in mind. You can, of course, use these for things like, grafting spells or, upcasting a super high level Armor of Agathis or anything along those lines, which can come in super handy. But overall, the Mystic's spell progression is a bit strange because of their special spell list and because of the way that it is kind of a half caster that's trying to be a full caster, just like the Artificer. Notably, the Mystic can dump a ton of damage out. It is one of the best damaging type characters, but their spell list also kind of leans into that support role. So you might have a bit of a support and damage-esque Mystic, but you're not going to be doing a ton of battlefield control, unlike some of the other casters that you'll have access to. They are a D6 hit dice character, which means that you'll be very weak if somebody does come in and attack you. That being said, you have access to Armor of Agathis, so that might be good to get hit. All this together, I think the Mystic is super fun, but let's go check out some feats that can help them out even more. A bit of a boring one, but Proficient is super nice on your Mystic, because getting your Mystic Missile's damage up, super nice. Again, this is up to 3 times you can take it. The first time gives you a proficiency bonus increase. The second time gives you a proficiency bonus increase, and the third time will give you a +1 to your max proficiency bonus. Notably, when you get a max bonus, it doesn't actually increase your proficiency bonus. It just increases the amount that you can get it to. A spell-based feat that I would really recommend is Learned. This gives you access to another spell list of your choice, which, like I said, the Mystic only ever gets to 8th level spell slots, but they don't even have 8th level spell slots, so picking up Learned can give you, access to the Wizard spell list, or maybe you want to pick up the Warlock spell list for some reason. These are great options to really boost the abilities that your Mystic can have access to without spending too many resources. You can also take this a second time to get another spell list access. Warcaster works super well on the Mystic because of your ability to, use that Mystic Missile to do extra damage. It says that you have advantage on saving throws to maintain concentration. Can be super good if you're using Wave because that's an expensive concentration spell. And you can cast an offensive spell as an opportunity attack as long as it only targets that one creature. So notably, you are allowed to use Mystic Missile for this, but you have to shoot all of your missiles at the one creature. An initiate feat that I'm going to recommend actually is Ranger Initiate. It says that you gain a +1 to your caster level, and you learn the Hunter's Mark spell, which you can cast by expending an extra spell slot to use the spell concentration free, which is super nice. Just expend 2 spell slots and then you get Hunter's Mark for free. But notably, doing an extra d6 damage every time you hit a target can stack up really well when you're hitting a target, 6 times with Mystic Missile. Which means that one of the best and strongest ways to just deal a ton of damage to creatures is actually to use Eldritch Blast with Hunter's Mark on a target to hit them multiple times. Every time you hit them, you'll be triggering the Capture Missile, which will also launch Mystic Missiles at them, which will also trigger Hunter's Mark. You can get a ton of damage off this way. It is a bit of a build to go for. Like, you have to actually build for this, but it can be one of the strongest ways to deal a ton of damage. Can't talk about the Initiate feats without talking about Mystic Initiate. This says that as an action, or when you cast Mystic Missile, roll a d4 and launch the number rolled Mystic Missiles at a target or targets within 100 feet. For each missile launched in this way, deal your proficiency bonus force damage to the target. This basically allows you to take Mystic Missile on a character without taking Mystic levels. So if you take this and you are not a Mystic, you get to cast Mystic Missile by rolling a d4. If you are a Mystic and already have Mystic Missile, this just gives you an extra d4 missiles launched every time you cast Mystic Missile. Super fun. Another combination of feats I'm going to recommend is Well Armored and Heavily Armored. Well Armored says that you gain proficiency in either light, medium, or heavy armor, and then you also gain proficiency in either light shields, or heavy shields. Picking up heavy would allow you to pick up Heavily Armored as a different feat, which says that while you're wearing heavy armor, you have a number of armor points equal to your strength modifier that will recharge on a long rest. When you take damage, you can expend a armor point to reduce the damage by double your proficiency bonus. And then if you take this a second time, you'll get a +1 to your strength, and your armor points now reduce damage by 3 times your proficiency bonus. So this is a bit of a niche one, but basically your Mystic does only get d6 hit dice, which means they're going to be a bit squishy, and so picking up a way to get heavy armor somehow would be super nice for them. That being said, you probably want that +1 caster from starting Mystic. So if this is a way to do that, to get heavy armor proficiency, and it's a way to get more bonuses to using your proficiency bonus, which they already really want a nice proficiency bonus. So I thought this was an interesting combo. If you don't like it, you don't have to take it, obviously. The Mystic is definitely one of the best damage dealing spellcasters out there. It's very tuned to be a damage dealing spellcaster. So if you've always wanted to play a spellcaster that just dishes out tons of damage, but everybody wants you to play control, here's a way to play a damage-dealing spellcaster. I kind of like the Mystic. It's pretty fun. Tell me what you think in the comments below. That being said, that's all I have for the Mystic today. Let's look at the options for what we'll be talking about next time. We could be talking about the Witch. This is a spellcaster very similar to the Warlock in premise, getting spells back on short rests and using a familiar to cast their spells through. Or we could go over the Monk. I talked about this a little earlier, but a warrior martial style that uses their bare fists and legs to kick and punch their enemies into oblivion and focus their ki to get special effects on their attacks. Or we could talk about the investigator. This is not necessarily a very combat focused, but very effective at not only solving problems, finding the answers to puzzles, and figuring out secrets throughout your world that your DM might have put through. Vote in the comments below or in my Discord channel announcements tab for which one of these you'd like to see next. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a like or subscribe. It helps me out a ton. And I hope you guys have an excellent rest of your day. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.